Tonight's big stories. Over 100 residents in a town in South Cotabato are reportedly down with a flu-like illness. Nationwide cases of the flu have also doubled this year. The DOH says it's not COVID-19, but is it a cause for concern?
The government is inching its way to its goal of food security and self-sufficiency in the country, as President Bongbong Marcos launched the Consolidated Rice Production and Mechanization Program in South Cotabato. What is this program all about? We'll find out more later on.
And a survey shows that majority of Catholic school students in the country are not in favor of mandatory ROTC. We'll find out more about the survey with Charina Claustro of the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines, who will join us later on in the program. Welcome to the show. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Ladies, our top story for the day, a mystery illness in Lake Cebu,
Is
South
this
Cotabato.
2020?
No, is it late 2019 all
Takes
over
us
again?
back to 2020.
I think it's timely that my brother just reminded the whole family to get our flu vaccine. Kasi parang nakalimutan na. We've been so focused on COVID-19, yung ibang injections natin. Have you taken your flu shots?
Not for
Actually,
this year.
I only started taking flu shots during COVID-19 because they said it would
okay.
help. So I'm like, okay, pneumovax, pneumonia vaccine, flu vaccine. But right, what is this mystery illness? Supposedly, symptoms sound exactly like the flu, at least fever, runny nose, headaches, and body weakness.
Well, Sean Reg, epidemiologist from the health department, reported that at least 160 people suffered from an influenza-like illness, 4 of whom have died in the last month. Now, the symptoms are similar to that of the regular flu, like cough, fever, sneezing, difficulty in breathing. The doctors there say it is not COVID-19 that affected the residents, but just like COVID, this illness is transmitted through respiratory droplets. That's why it's very important to limit interactions and still wear face masks, especially around sick people.
Iwasan po muna makihalubilo sa labas ng bahay, at kung umuubo po, we should have proper na coughing etiquette po, at kailangan po magsuot ng mask, especially kung meron po tayong symptoms. Kung maaari, especially for our children na mga affected from 0 to 4 years old, is magpabakuna po ng routine immunization, kasi mostly din po ng mga nakita namin are those with incomplete immunization.
Now, the health department says this influenza-like illness is not entirely new. But what exactly led to the uptick in cases in South Cotabato? Let's bring in mobile journalist Yeda Pascual for that. Yeda, what do you have for us?
Sean, according to DOH Region 12, most of these infected individuals chose not to get themselves checked. So talagang nagkagulatan na lang, marami na palang nahawa. Another thing is that communities in barangays in Lake Cebu are tightly knit. That's why it's easy to catch the virus in these areas. So again, as much as possible, it's best to consult a doctor if you have symptoms. It's best to be sure, safe, and healthy at this point. Sean.
Thanks for that, Yeda.
Now, aside from Lake Cebu, the health department reports more than 65,000 cases of influenza-like illness recorded nationwide. Citing its latest disease surveillance report, the DOH said that 65,000 cases were reported from January 1 to May 13. Now, this is 114% higher compared to the 30,700 cases reported during the same period of last year. Davao reported the most cases at over 12,200, while Metro Manila recorded the highest increase from 313 to 3,882 cases. Health experts have warned the public against flu-like illnesses during the rainy season. Fever, chills, dry cough, loss of appetite, body ache, nausea, and sneezing are the common symptoms.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about these health issues with DOH Chief Information Officer Undersecretary Eric Taya. Good evening, sir. Welcome to the big story. A little bit worrisome, right? Because this does take us back to the onset of the pandemic. What can you tell us about this mystery flu-like illness in Lake Cebu and what the residents there are experiencing? Is this a mystery to you guys?
Right now, we are getting fresh reports from our field epidemiology training program. Our epidemiologists are down there doing the investigations. Yes, we confirm that there are over 160 cases so far starting during the first week of May up to June 13. The investigation showed that many cases were children, at least half of them, and that they presented with fever, cough, and because COVID-19 was ruled out, we are now looking at influenza, another virus that mimics COVID-19. And so we have provided information to the community through our investigation team and, of course, the local health officials. And tomorrow there will be a briefing so that things will be clearer and that interventions, as you mentioned, masks and reporting when you're sick and drinking fluids will help if this is flu. And for the elder persons, because they're also getting sick, should get their influenza vaccination.
Right. Dr. Eric, cases of the flu or flu-like illnesses have been going up. Grabe rin yung jump from last year. Should we take it to mean that we're coming off of a low baseline because last year mobility was not as free as it is this year? Would it be that? Because when we were just all stuck at home, hindi naman tayo masyado nagkakahawaan. Or is this brought on by the rains or the hot weather?
That can be one of the reasons, but of course we know that in the Philippines, the month of June is the beginning of the influenza season in the country. During the rainy months, it's not only influenza that we should care about. We have the wild diseases, W for waterborne diseases, I for influenza, L for leptospirosis, and D for dengue. For what's happening there in Mindanao and the other areas, we have alerted local health officials that they have to report as soon as possible because we are on a global alert of a possible pandemic from new strains of the influenza virus. As soon as we get the laboratory confirmation, we are going to provide you with details. This has been reported already to Secretary Ted Herbosa, who is looking closely at what is happening there in at least one barangay, Barangay Ned, in Lake Cebu in South Cotabato.
Hey, Undersecretary, like we talked about when the show started, iba-iba po yung epekto sa amin ng COVID-19 pandemic. Like for one, I forgot about my flu shot. She is taking her flu shot because of the pandemic. Is there anything in the data that talks about the effects now of the COVID-19 pandemic on immunization rates on the Filipinos? Dahil po ba yung carry-over po nun, meron po ba tayong nakikitang trend?
Gretchen, bago pa mag-pandemic, bumaba na yung immunization rates natin at lalong naapektuhan ngayong pandemic. Kaya nga hanggang ngayon, nagsasagawa kami ng catch-up, measles, rubella at bivalent oral polio vaccination na matatapos po bukas. In-extend na namin yan ng 2 weeks. Sumampan na sa halos 85% ang national coverage natin. Subalit gusto natin tumaas pa yan, 90%. At nagpapasalamat kami sa mga local government na nakapaghabol. May nababalitaan kami, maraming lugar na over 100% ang kanilang vaccination coverage. Subalit may mga lugar na naiiwan pa rin, kaya tinitingnan namin mabuti anong mga kadahilanan nito. Libre po yung binigay namin measles rubella vaccine. At siya nga nakikita natin, sana manumbalik po yung sigla. Yung mga nanay po dyan, dali nyo po sa health center. Huwag kayong mag-atubili sapagkat libre ang gamot at marami po tayong supply. Maliban dyan, sa isang linggo, ay yung bivalent COVID vaccine, yung pinakabagong version ng COVID vaccine ay ilo-launch na po ng Department of Health. Mauna yung health workers at mga senior citizen patient. Tama ka, ngayong pandemic ay naapektuhan talaga yung vaccine coverage. So nagka-catch up po tayo at mabuti naman ng mga pamahalang lokal, mga mayor, governor ay nakikisa po sa kagawa ng kalusugan. Yung ibang ahensya po ay tumutulong na din sa amin, pati po yung sa private sector. Maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Yusek, just very quickly, one last question. You mentioned Secretary Herbosa na rin. I might take the chance to ask you whether you've had a briefing with him and do you know what his priorities will be moving forward?
Yes. He has a slogan. It's fast, action-oriented, and responsive. This is FAR. His priorities are those that the president has already discussed with him, and this includes the HIV situation in the country where young adults are being reported to be in increasing numbers in terms of HIV infection or AIDS. And then there is tuberculosis, where the Philippines ranks 4 globally in terms of the highest number of cases that are being detected or reported. And then there is the primary care services that is being focused now because of the Universal Care Act, because we better prevent these diseases rather than take care of them when it is very costly when these patients find themselves in hospitals. Of course, the secretary also has already announced digital transformation in the health sector, beginning with the Department of Health. And he already assigned me a task as the Chief Information Officer to carry out the activities that will lead to the achievement of a digital transformation.
All right,
So
perfect.
we are into digitalization, and
Right.
changing the culture in the Department of Health.
Fantastic. Lots of plans there. We're going to check back in with you at a later time. Thanks so much for that, Undersecretary Eric Tayag of the DOH. Now, yesterday, we talked about the resumption of this tug of war between Taguig and Makati over the Fort Bonifacio Military Reserve.
And its surrounding environs. So
Again, just to reiterate, it has been decided with finality by the Supreme Court that the 4 Embo barangays belong to Taguig, right?
Pero wala pang writ of execution.
Correct.
Yes.
That's why hindi pa na-transfer
Yes. Oo,
from
ng
Makati to
DILG.
Taguig. That's the only thing that's holding it up at the moment.
And again, the reason why we're talking about this a little over a year after that was decided with finality by the High Court was because Makati Mayor Abby Binay supposedly claimed that the fight is not over yet kasi may oral arguments pa daw. So medyo nabulaga lahat, di ba? Si Taguig Mayor Lani Cayetano nabulaga, pati na rin syempre yung SC.
Pero kung tatanungin yung mga Taguig and Makati citizens kung saan nila prefer,
Ano kaya ang magiging sagot?
ano kaya?
Well, we did just that. So let's hear it from the Makati Zens. That's what they call themselves. Living in these disputed barangays. Are they still Team Makati or are they more open to being part of Team Taguig?
Libre lahat mula sa paa hanggang sa damit, bags, lahat. Pati sa inuman meron sila. Napakaswerte nila.
Nakuha na ng Taguig yung BGC. Huwag naman na sana dito.
Kung ano naman ang decision nga nila, ala naman kami magagawa.
Alright, interesting.
So,
So,
pwede mag-plebiscite eh.
oo, gusto mo magpa-plebiscite ba tayo?
Di ba yun yung nasa constitution natin?
Dapat,
For any
well,
city to be moved, kailangan may plebiscite.
Exactly, which did not happen. So, but then, siguro we'll have to see what that saga will hold in the future. But the question now is, what benefits can these affected Makati residents from the Embos expect once their areas are turned over to Taguig? Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez is here to tell us exactly that. Hi, Pam, what do you have?
Sean, our team was also able to interview some residents of Taguig to find out what benefits they are receiving from their LGU. One of them was Tatay Antonio, who has been a resident of Taguig for 5 years now. He says that like Makati residents, they are also receiving benefits like medical services, especially during the height of pandemic. He adds that Taguig residents also receive scholarship programs and financial assistance from their local government. Sean?
Thanks for that, Pamela Vasquez.
Kung tanongin doon yung real estate, no? What will that do? If my place was moved to Taguig, tataas ba?
Yung taxes?
Hindi, yung
It
real estate
depends on
value.
yung market value
Depends
ng
kung
real estate mo.
nasaan.
Yun yung gusto ko malaman eh.
So if you're asked to vote, dun ka pupunta.
So, nasan ba
Kung
yung
saan mas
property mo,
mataas,
Gretchen?
Papa-assess natin yan. Up next, most Catholic school students are against proposals to bring back mandatory ROTC. Now, that's according to an online survey by the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines. We'll talk to them later on in the program. Don't go away. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. President Bongbong Marcos was in South Cotabato earlier today, making the headlines today, South Cotabato, as he led the launch of the Consolidated Rice Production and Mechanization Program. In his speech, the president emphasized efficient farming, consolidation, and mechanization in the agriculture sector to increase rice production. Through these, Marcos said that the labor costs and production costs of rice will supposedly go down. Large machinery will also be used, meaning that the process of planting and harvesting will also be faster. The Agriculture Department has since turned over 115 million pesos to jumpstart the program.
Dahil naging mas mura sa farmer, ay lalaki naman ang kanyang kita. At yan ang pangatlong bagay. Unang-una ay yung supply ng bigas ay kailangan natin yung tiyakin. Unang-una. Pangalawa, pababain natin yung presyo. Ngunit, kung minsan ay hindi nababanggit, napakahalaga nitong pangatlo na ito na magkaroon naman ng magandang hanap buhay ang ating mga magsasaka.
A lot of jargon over there, but let's find out more about this modern agriculture program of the Marcos Jr. administration from mobile journalist Julie Baiza. Julie, can you give us the details?
Sean, President Marcos said the Philippines needs to improve rice yields due to tight import supply in Southeast Asia, which the country experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. The president also pointed out that the consolidated program is part of his trust to pull together resources and functions to help farmers by reducing the cost of inputs and processing. The Consolidated Rice Production and Mechanization Program is a pet project of South Cotabato Governor Reynaldo Tamayo Jr. The project's pilot farm in Barangay Dahay in Surala Town involves 94 farmers and 210 hectares of rice land. This will expand to 1,400 hectares in the towns of Tantangan, Norala, Santo Niño, Banga, and in Coronadal City. Marcos is hoping that with this program, farmers in South Cotabato would do away with the traditional method of drying their rice harvest on roadsides. Sean?
All right, thanks for explaining that. Mobile journalist Julie Baiza.
Moving on to other stories, most private Catholic school students are rejecting the proposal to revive the mandatory ROTC program. An online survey conducted by the country's largest association of private schools shows that 53% of students disagree with bringing back mandatory ROTC, with 32% expressing strong disagreement. 28% agreed with the proposal, while 19% remained undecided. The Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines conducted this poll from April 3 to 24. Well, CEAP says the purpose of the survey is to get the collective opinions of students on the proposed mandatory bill and its possible influence on them, their education, and their future. The Kabataan Party List welcomes the results of this survey, saying that it reveals the true opinion of the youth on mandatory ROTC. The Senate, Defense, Higher Education, and Finance committees have approved the bill despite concerns among youth groups over past abuses by cadets in the program. Well, here to join us for a discussion on the results of the survey is Charina Claustro. She's the Advocacy and Information Management Coordinator of CEAP. Charina, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Before anything else, I wanted to ask what led you guys to conduct this survey regarding the proposal to revive ROTC. Was there any particular reason behind it?
All right. Good evening, Ms. Gretchen, Ms. Sean, and Ms. Regina. First of all, on behalf of CAP, I would like to thank you for inviting us to this program po. No? So to answer the first question, I think the very first time CAP heard that there are many proposed measures on ROTC, actually we immediately released a position expressing our reservations towards the mandatory ROTC. Pareho namin itong pinadala sa House of Representatives at sa Senate. Then as part of advocating CAP position, our officers immediately instructed us, okay, this time let's hear naman the voice and sentiments of our Catholic schools, especially their students. So kaya we released a survey last April asking the Catholic students on their thoughts about the mandatory ROTC po.
Wait, Charina, I remember there was a survey conducted or commissioned by Senator Sherwin Gatchalian back in March. Sinasabi dito 78% are in favor of ROTC in college. Pero meron nagdi-dispute nun. Sinasabi na pag sinama yung senior high school, bababa yung mga numero na yun. What were your parameters for this survey that you conducted?
Okay. So, siguro just a clarification, no? The intention really of the survey is to hear the thoughts of the Catholic youth. Kasi nga, may mga existing survey na lumabas. And the parameters of our survey, the target respondents are first, senior high school student and first-year college students from the Catholic school all over the Philippines. So we have almost 20,000 respondents na sumagot po doon sa survey. I think yung main result ng survey, hindi talaga maikakaila na nagpapakita siya ng isang position ng mga kabataan natin. Bagaman hindi siya kabuuan, pero itong isang bahagi na to ng mga kabataan natin na nagpapahayag ng kanilang pagtingin sa mandatory ROTC, I think these results are saying something that our lawmakers should also hear.
Alright, Charina, ano po ba yung stand ng CEAP on this proposal to revive mandatory ROTC? At kung hindi nga ROTC, nung panahon ko meron silang pinalit doon, tawag NSTP. So parang mas more of outreach programs. Mas pabor ba kayo doon? Or what is your official stand on this matter?
Okay. First of all, CAP wishes to state that we are not against the offering of ROTC. And in fact, we recognize that it is currently one of the program under the NSTP law. But the position of CAP, actually the current NSTP program has been satisfactorily embedded in our higher education system. And we are deeply concerned that the NSTP program, which has been fairly working, is being considered for refill to give way to the mandatory ROTC. That's why the content of our position is not to enact the mandatory ROTC. Anong mga dahilan? Number one, it is not necessary. I think the CAP believes that there are sa panahon ngayon, there are a lot of issues that our government should also mag-focus doon. Pangalawa, making it mandatory, nawawalan ng kalayaan yung mga kabataan natin na pumili. And of course, yung threats of abuse and corruption must be addressed. So, the position of CAP is first, not to enact the mandatory ROTC po.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We're going to leave it there. CEAP Advocacy and Information Management Coordinator Charina Claustro.
After the break, the Trade Department says online selling platforms like Shopee or Lazada will be held equally liable as their vendors who sell deceptive or defective products. More on that when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here in One News. And what else do we have tonight?
Shopping.
Online shopping.
Have you ever
We were
bought
just talking about it during the break.
have you ever bought anything defective online, deceptive rather?
Yes, both defective and deceptive.
Oo.
Honestly though, I've had a pretty good experience.
Ako mali yung table na yung ang laki-laki ng table dun sa ad, tapos yung binili ko pagdating sa akin isang
Lego
maliit.
sized pala.
Oo. Well, according to Undersecretary Ruth Castello, the top complaint of customers are deceptive sales. Now, these are products being sold by sellers, but they look different when they get to the customers. She said among the complaints they received were from online purchases of expensive mobile phones and other gadgets who instead receive boxes containing wet wipes, rocks, or toilet paper. Now, this violates the Consumer Act, which online platforms may be held accountable and could pay up to 300,000 pesos in fines. Last week, Trade Secretary Alfredo Pascual called for an explanation from the two largest online platforms, Shopee and Lazada, due to the rampant complaints of deceptive sales.
Kung individual merchant lang siya na nasa labas, siya lang po mag-isa. Pero kung nasa loob po ng platform, Sir Aljo, pati po platform kasama doon sa pinipinalize natin. Bahala po sila kung sino sa kanila ang magbabayad, pero kailangan po talaga nilang bayaran yung penalty.
Moving on to corporate news, PLDT has played down reports that its digital unit Voyager Innovations was considering another round of fundraising. The telco said this in a stock market filing today, a day after PLDT Chair Manny Pangilinan said Voyager was looking to raise up to $150 million for Maya Bank. He spoke on the sidelines of their annual stockholders meeting. CEO Al Panlilio was also quoted as saying an IPO for Maya Bank was being considered. In the official statement, PLDT said both executives were merely conveying their personal opinions and were by no means giving forecast or guidance on Voyager's activities. Jumping over now to another MVP company, TV5 welcomed TVJ and the Dabarkads for a lunch get-together. This is the Noontime Group's first time visiting the TV5 headquarters in Mandaluyong, where we are since leaving Tape Incorporated, the production company behind Eat Bulaga. They had a jam-packed day filled with interviews and photo shoots and a lunch with TV5 executives. There are no details yet on what their new show will be called or when it will air, but for now, TVJ and the Dabarkads said they're enjoying their new home in the Kapatid networks.
Mga Dabarkads! Alas 12 na! Mga Dabarkads! Alas 12 na! Boss Sido. We're live now with the Dabarkads. O sige, mga Dabarkads, I hope masarap ang inyong lunch for today. At kami, ini-enjoy namin ang first lunch with TV5 and pare.
Sana mag-guest natin dito.
Libre naman mangarap. Pero
Bukas may special guest tayo.
Speaking of pangarap, our big picture tonight is a reminder for kids that you can be anything and that you can guest anyone on the big story, even to be a vice president for one day. Meet 14-year-old Naomi, VP Sara's vice president in training. Naomi is a grade 8 student from the Mariano G. Medalla Integrated School in Bacolod City. She accompanied VP Sara to Brunei and Singapore as part of the OVP's You Can Be VP project. This gives students a chance to see the Vice President in action while teaching the importance of leadership skills and education.
So tomorrow again?
But that's it for the show tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for watching and good night.